Corinne, you just inspire me so much. It's such an honor to be working with you over the past bunch of weeks. It's been amazing. Corinne's also one of our fellows, one of our community bio fellows, and yeah, it's just a fearless leader. And Corinne, take it away to this panel, so everybody can join me in welcoming Corinne Takara.
Thank you so much, David, for that lovely introduction. It's such an honor to be here to continue this conversation. As David mentioned, I am a bio artist and STEAM educator. I'm with the Biolab Xinampa in Salinas, California, and I'm also co-founder of BioJam, which is a pilot program in the Stanford Bioengineering Department. And I do most of my prototyping for my workshops in my garage makerspace, The Nest. So I'm really excited we're going to continue this conversation in more depth. And David, thank you for highlighting people that are in the session here that are participants, because we have so much expertise and so many voices to share. This is going to be an interactive discussion as we get further along in the session. And what we're really anchoring into is a very important question that I know we're all dealing with, is how do we start and sustain community labs in this time? And what I'm going to ask each of our panelists as I introduce them is how to be thinking about how we define our communities and how you define sustainability. They can focus on organizationally, financially, community, personal sustainability. We'll also have a mural board to work in. But I would love for all of you who are listening to also be thinking about how you're going to define sustainability for you as we move along, because we're going to be sharing that in the chat, and you all have really wonderful stories to share. So it's really an honor to introduce our global panel here. We have a couple that weren't in the morning. So I'm going to introduce all of them just real quickly, and then when they answer the question, the first part of their question is they're going to be introducing themselves and a little bit about the organization. So first, I'm just going to go through who's on our panel. We have Ana Ibarra from Xinampa, California, and from Xinampa, and that's in Salinas, California. She's representing the region of North America. We have Rachel Aronoff from Hackuarium in Switzerland, and she's representing the region of Europe. We have Thelma Gonzalez from AllBiotech, and she's from Mexico City, and she's going to represent the region of Latin America. We have Harit Akligoh from Hive Biolab, representing the region of Africa. And we have Bhavna Pandya from Bioriidl, representing Asia. So we have a global representation here, and it's such an honor to introduce these innovators and leaders of their community labs. So I'm going to get started with our questions, and each speaker will have 3 minutes. And I'm going to start with Ana Ibarra. And the first question is how to get started and how you define community as well. So why don't you introduce yourself, what your community lab is, and your thoughts on getting started and sustaining a lab, as well as what is community. Thank you, Ana.
Thank you so much, Corinne, for that wonderful introduction. My name is Ana Ibarra, out of Salinas, California. I'm the co-founder of Xinampa, our community biolab here. Let's see, so we are a very new community lab. So this is very fresh for me. We're still, in the process of really building this into a very strong organization. So I would say the first thing, based on my experience, is that you really have to know the community that you're working with. Every community is going to be different. So it's very important for you to look and really learn your community from all angles. We spent a considerable amount of time initially when we were coming together to build this out, really reaching out to different groups like our educational institutions here, the industry. Salinas is very unique in the sense that we're very proximal to agriculture. We're agriculture town, city, and produce a significant amount of in terms of economically speaking, it's very important to the economy of California. So we spend a lot of time reaching out to different stakeholders, but also really understanding who are going to be our constituents, and that is where the challenge is, because you really have to push yourself to learn about everyone, and from who is going to be using this, and who needs to be included into your your vision, because this way you can kind of like understand where you are missing pieces, or where you are missing on-ramps for your project or your organization to be more inclusive. That took a long time. That takes a long time, I think, by nature. It's time intensive, but it's absolutely important for this to happen early on. And my community, as I said, is very unique. We're a predominantly Latinx community. I think more than 80% of the population in Salinas is Latinx. We have a lot of immigrants, and a little, we have a lot of immigrants, a lot of farm workers, and a lot of young people as well.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you for sharing our unique community that we're working with. Next, I'd like to ask Rachel to share a bit about your lab, yourself, and also who is your community, and then share like your thoughts on starting and just getting started and creating your lab. Thank you, Rachel.
Well, I can't say anything about actually starting Hackuarium because I learned about it almost 2 years into its formation already. So although it's going to be, I think in November, 5 years since I first heard of aquarium, we say in the French way, which sort of emphasizes the transparency and, open science and so on. This biohacker space had already been around. It's already had its 6th birthday. And I was very impressed. It was only through my work that I was working with a group that was doing a big EU project about finding nanoscale pollutants in water, and it was called the Bravo Project. And for that, with the biohackers of Hackuarium, we made a DIY fluorescence detector using Arduino and LEDs, and biosensor bacteria, like the lab at the University of Lausanne, where I was working at the time. And I just got so impressed by these soldering in the first step. I mean, I had never done any soldering, and one thing led to another. One of the bioartists of the group asked me to be co-president with her. I think it was in around 2017. And yeah, I just got more and more involved. Initially, Hackuarium was part of a big industrial space, and they had a lot of space, and they did a lot of getting equipment from other companies and other universities, a lot of old equipment. So I'm actually in our main P1 Biolab here, so you can see, well, if I move, some microscopes, and I mean, we have a real ultracentrifuge, we have a shaker thing over there, and I think partnering with companies that need to spend their grant money, or with universities that need to get new things to get their old things, is really a great way for community labs to pull things together. But we're really driven by members and members' projects. And it's all sort of this volunteer thing where people just do it in their extra time. We don't have any paid positions right now. So it's all quite exciting. And sustainability, I guess for me, would be that we don't have to worry about paying our rent. So when I first met Hackuarium, we had a sponsor, we had this huge space that was a bit derelict, but it wasn't too bad. But then it got renovated for the labs. And then all of a sudden, our sponsor asked us for a big rent. And everybody in our group, we're like a Swiss association, and they said, no, we've got to move. So luckily, together with 2 other associations and some other startups, we found a sort of preliminary a space where we're having a lot of fun, but we know the building is destined to be destroyed in the next 5 years. So we're still far from being sustainable. We have low rent, and we have just almost enough space, but we're searching all the time and trying to figure out how we can keep projects going, keep people excited, keep learning things, and not just share knowledge, but know-how. And maybe I've already gone long enough.
No, I just really quickly, what is your community? Like, who are the people in this amazing lab that was able to pivot to a rent-free space? I'm just curious. Just real
So
quickly.
we have everyone from young high school students to retired professors. And so one of our relatively newer members actually started the chemistry Olympiads. He's a retired professor. And we have somebody who worked at Novartis and is already retired. But we also have students. I had a student a year ago who did a whole project around oral bacteria for her high school sort of special thesis. And so we sort of did some microbiome stuff with her. And I can't imagine doing those experiments now, after the pandemic. But yeah, so we have a real mixed bag, and we try to get real local people involved too. I was supposed to give a presentation at this 55 plus club of the village we're in. It's called Écu Blanc, and that also got canceled because of the pandemic. But yeah, we have our neighbors got invited to our lab warming. I mean, we're really trying to be a local place.
It's wonderful to hear. I just was curious about the full context. It sounds like you have a broad community there. Thank you, Rachel. I'm next going to go to Thelma, if you don't mind sharing, and I think you know the question. Yeah, thank you.
Hey, hello everyone. I'm Telma. I'm from Mexico City. And yeah, I'm part of AllBiotech and all this crazy idea of community labs. Well, I obviously didn't know what a community lab was when I was an undergrad, but I was always thinking like, maybe it's a Latin American context, but many researchers are like really in a square that they don't want to look around, because you go to a research group with all the enthusiast of an undergrad person saying, oh, I want to do this and this and this and learn this and this and this. And like the researchers say like, no, I have this line of research. If you want to do it, join me. If not, go out of my lab. They were like really close to all these kind of new ideas or new projects, and especially, with all the editing bacteria, it's a new technology and they don't want to step in because they have a background in researching before. So new ideas weren't this good, like accepted for them. So I was always thinking like, I wish I could have my own lab and I could do my own experiments. And I was just thinking about like, I should have tons of money to do that. But then I found, for some random things in my life, some other people that were the same like me. Like they really wanted their own lab and their own projects, like saying, okay, I want to paint this bacteria green for no research purpose. I just want to do it. So we started to gather and say like, okay, maybe we can't have a lab, but what if we go to a club and talk about all the projects we would like to do with lab equipment? And most of them were the same. And then just like that, googling, looking in YouTube, all the like little workshops, we realized that we don't really need that much equipment, and that we have a 3D printer. So many of the equipment of the lab can be made through 3D lab equipment, 3D printed lab equipment. So it was awesome to discover that we already can make an equipment if you know how it works. So that's how we started to create our lab. And the point is that all the researchers, at least in my country and in my university, were like, no, you're just playing, you don't know what you're doing, that's even dangerous. But no, we have like protocols to keep safe and to have like small projects that cannot impact like in a bad way to our people. So yeah, little by little, you go creating your own community and having this effort, even the emotional support you need to create new projects. So yeah, little by little with friends, you can rule the world.
I love that, Thelma. Little by little, and also I want to highlight something you said earlier about starting community labs. And the first session was storytelling. And I even love your part about storytelling with people just want to color bacteria. So it's been wonderful to hear from, yeah, that's really great. Okay, so now I'd love to hear a bit more. We're going to hear from Harry. He's also spoke in the morning. Harry, would you mind sharing your thoughts and a little bit more about you and your context, your community?
All right, thank you very much. So my name is Harry Akligoh, and I'm based here in Kumasi, Ghana. I would say that I happen to be very fortunate, trailblazing in an environment which obviously didn't have anything close to what we are doing currently. But just to give a brief introduction about myself, I'm the co-founder of the Hive Biolab based in Kumasi, one of the first in Ghana, and I think the second in Africa, because you equally have another amazing group in Cameroon that is equally trying to trailblaze in that region. So I would say the motivation for us to get started here in Ghana with generally creating an ecosystem of people who are going to be leveraging biotechnology and biology as a tool for solving community problems was largely facilitated, one, by personal experiences, and two, because people generally are beginning to understand how relevant biology is as a tool for development. So as a personal experience, what actually got me more involved into DIY biology started some few years ago, largely with citizen science. So as a young student, there were several times where I failed miserably at science and maths, only because we didn't have like the platforms, we didn't have the tools to do science and even understand some of the things we were being taught. So I failed miserably at it, but very interesting enough for me at the time, I began to question myself what was wrong. But then getting the opportunity to get past all through those stages into the university, I realized that the only way to solve this problem was through having what it takes to create the tools that could be used for hacking simple experiments. So then I put together my colleagues who were studying the same things I was doing at the time for us to begin hacking simple experiments for young people in basic schools, just so that we can bridge that gap. So little down the line in 2017, chanced upon the Global Community Bio Summit, which I did apply. Then I saw buzzwords like synthetic biology, do-it-yourself biology, biohacking, and it got me so fascinated. And interestingly enough, at the time in the university, majority of my colleagues were not able to conduct their experiments because, one, we did not have the money to buy some of the reagents we needed to buy to perform some of these experiments for our final year thesis. So we had to shelve those ideas, very brilliant ideas, but we needed to shelve them. So then I said, no, I needed to, there is certainly a different way to this. And during the summit at the time, when I was rejected some visa and that prevented me from participating, I took time that I was going to just participate online, just like it is happening now. Went through all the sessions and hearing what DIY biology, synthetic biology was, read about it online and realized that it was more of a bottom-up approach to doing these things. And then, yeah.
I'm so sorry, and we'll hear more in a little bit. I just want to give the time also to Bhavna. So thank you so much, Harry. Bhavna. If you don't mind sharing it. Yeah, thank you. Your thoughts, but first introduce yourself and what is community to you, your organization, and starting and sustaining, just a little bit on that. So thank you.
Yeah. I'm Bhavna Pandya. I'm leading this Bioriidl, which is a community biolab based in Mumbai, India, and which is now a business incubator for life sciences startups. We started with very naive. We didn't had anything with us. It was just an empty space. But to start with, I just got in touch with our community members, through Google groups, emails, and chats, and I got to know so many challenges. And then Tito said one thing, that the journey that you want to start, it's going to be very difficult and very tough because it's not easy to sustain the lab. So from that day onward, that I knew that the sustainability is going to be a big challenge for us when we start the lab. But then, so that's how I didn't want to spend a penny on anything. So we started gathering discarded equipments from the labs, which were buying new equipments, and they were discarding the old ones. So I still remember that, you know, my members were carrying all the equipment and glasswares from one place to other place so that we can get started with the project. So yeah, so that's how we actually started, and we made something happen. And then we came up with few good projects which really captured people's attention, and so many people got interested. And also we tried to waive off rent by proposing this community biolab concept to our trustee of Somaya Vidya Vihar University. So that's how we don't have to pay rent now, because he also is very interested in such concepts, and he always supported us. So we got the space, but then to start with something, we had to start from somewhere. So we started with these equipment, and then with projects, and then startups came into the picture, and then government came, and then we built several models to sustain ourselves, and we are fortunate that we are still in a good position where we can sustain ourselves for more 5 years and 10 years. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Bhavna. That's really interesting to hear. There's another group here that also doesn't have to pay rent. And so I think part of the theme here is how do you build those relationships with those organizations that can hear your story and feel like that's a worthy thing to do. So now we're going to move on to question 2, and we're going to go through 3 questions here, and then I'm really eager to hear from the participants here as well. So this is a really big question. So what is the biggest challenge that you've had in this time of COVID, and what are opportunities? So, and when I say biggest challenges, that could be financially, that can be distance engagement with your community, or something else that you want to share. But what are the biggest challenges, and what might be opportunities? So I'm going to start this time with Thelma. Thelma, do you mind sharing your thoughts?
Yeah, totally. Hello. And well, about, for example, of the things you're saying about the rent, sometimes we started with like lab that we can take to other parts. I mean, once it was like 1 week in this room, 1 week in another room, because we were changing our places. But with the pandemic, we just brought all our equipment to our houses. Like everyone took one of the equipments or materials or regions and take that to home and be safe. And we have to shift like the way, obviously we do experiments, we are not having any contact, but for example, some of the ideas that came up is that we can create kits for people, like, I don't know, having DIY microscope and some samples you can see, and then send that to deliver to people who buy it, and you go and deliver, and you can give a workshop of how to use it, and to shift to a virtual workshop. Another idea, for example, is to create online classes. This is especially hard because there are a lot of free videos in the internet, so why would you pay for a video? But it's like special, like you give the context of what you want to do, and then you get like specific ideas of things that can be done or can't be done in your situation, so a little more attached to you. And for example, the third option for us was to create content, like really create infographics or only information, just to people get to know not only about COVID, but all science that, for example, in a specific school, if they need content about science, well, we can prepare something that is approved, because most of the ones working in the lab are scientists. So yeah, that's it. Those are 3 basic ideas we had to shift.
That's wonderful, Thelma. So you have distributed lab equipment, a lab equipment went home. That's amazing. We talked about virtual workshops, kits, and pivoting to doing science education infographics. It's really interesting. So you pretty much highlighted all opportunities. So thank you. It's really wonderful. Rachel, I'm going to go to you next. What are some challenges and opportunities that you find in this time of COVID?
Well, I can't say much without mentioning Joggle, because during the pandemic, we got really involved in Just One Giant Lab, Thomas Landren's group, and we sort of pulled together a whole bunch of people, and people hear more about it on Sunday. But basically, the biggest challenge in terms of Hackuarium and our lab here is just that we couldn't meet. Our usual Wednesday night open nights were sort of killed by the virus. And so we had to find other things to do. And I think working internationally in the way we've done for our corona detective, that as I already mentioned, you'll hear about on Sunday, really gave us a good outlet for a lot of shared learning. I felt like I was back in graduate school, you know. You'd say, did you see this paper? Did you see this preprint? And, oh, which set of primers should we use? And how should we detect? And it was really super an exciting time for us, a super busy time. And getting the people in the lab to do virtual things, I think was helped by my excitement about doing this project too. So often it is just a little bit, one person really wants to do one thing and then another person gets sparked, and then that leads to another bit of spark. And I guess coming out of this and the long-term strategy of keeping everything alive is still a challenge ahead. But if we win the X Prize, then all our problems will be solved. But yeah, you don't count on things like that. It's a real big long shot.
Thank you, Rachel. Do you want to just highlight again when you're speaking again to talk about your work?
So where I'm speaking?
No, when in the summit you mentioned.
Oh, yes. We'll be talking on Sunday afternoon, I'm pretty sure, this whole big Joggle session talking about the different viral detection strategies we've been working on together. It's been a really collaborative open science effort.
That's wonderful. So again, it's interesting to hear of like what we're having here shared is more opportunities in this unfortunate time.
Yeah.
So thank you. So you found anchorage and mission over research that you were doing together with others. That's really nice. And it's very inspiring. Harry, I'm going to go to you next. Would you mind sharing your thoughts about biggest challenges and opportunities in this time?
Okay, so on my part, I would say that the challenges we have faced were quite enormous, and one of them is disruptions in the global supply chain. I mean, which obviously affected us here because there were a number of projects that we were just about rolling on, largely developing a molecular assay for some sexually transmitted infections that we are working on in our lab. But because we heavily relied on much of these consumables from our partners abroad, we were unable to have them because majority of these supplies were in that shortage, right? So it drastically affected the timelines of this project. So that was one of the grave challenges that I would say we faced as a lab. However, I mean, keeping in touch with our community was one of the things that also affected us because, I mean, there were very strict restriction measures. So we found it quite challenging to convene most of our community. And, you know, sometimes just to have some projects that are ongoing, you need to have this physical laboratory touch to it just for people to understand. And because you cannot have a laboratory session online and still have that transition in terms of knowledge happening, it's affected us quite a lot. But then I think one of the amazing opportunities it brought to us was to rethink how we actively engage with our community, because there was one project which is currently about ending called the Girls in Biotech project, which we were running, which was a gender-based project to expose more Ghanaian women and African ladies to opportunities in the biosciences, right? It was supposed to engage these university students, ladies, and other females to the opportunities and have some hands-on opportunities in the biosciences. We couldn't do it. So what we had to do was to re-strategize, have an online session, and then have a boot camp towards the end to bring these ladies in-house into the lab, just a few where we are still observing the social distancing protocols to get on. It would have been better if you had quite a lot more of these people who showed interest coming in-house to train them, but because of the restriction, it's affecting things. And one other thing that I think it's helping us is that it is helping us to very much understand that about the evolution of things that are happening in terms of biology, and bringing us a lot of opportunities as young people, as biologists, where we can bring to bear some of the things that we are learning. So for me, this is where I want to sit, because from where I sit, where as Africans, most often than not, we do not have the capacity to do some of these things. There are a lot of capacity building opportunities that have come up now that is helping us get to that level, and also to resource ourselves for future pandemics. So these are the opportunities, and generally tying in our spaces into that, because we are heavily involved in some projects that are relating to COVID and all that. So I think that's how.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you highlighting, rethinking how you engage with community, and that case study of working with women and how to get them involved in science. You did a hybrid model where some of it was online and then you brought some into the lab, social distance. That's really fascinating. I'd like now to go to Bhavna. Would you like to share?
Yeah, sure. So I agree with Harry. We also face the supply chain problem here. We are still facing, every media, reagent, chemicals, everything is stopped supplying till now, because India is highest and Mumbai is highest in coronavirus cases. But the opportunities for us were, we created one social opportunity where in the month of March, where our city actually ran out of hand sanitizers. So all our community members, they came together. They actually worked on making DIY hand sanitizers, and they went out and distributed these hand sanitizers to local shops, people, so they can use it. And we were trying to stop the spread to some extent, but then then this complete lockdown happened in our city, and then everyone is just locked in their homes. They can't go out. That's a big challenge for us. But then we really made use of this challenge in an opportunity. We've created online community of brainstormers in the field of biology who wants to come up with a great idea. So we launched a design challenge in the month of May. So there we got a lot of innovators, and we also got so many queries for the membership of our community Biolab. So I think that's the point where people actually realized that this is the place I want to go and develop something, and then find some solution for it. So it was an opportunity for us, as well as we have pivoted our model into online system, where we are helping all these innovators online by raising CSR for their project, helping them raise funding from investors. We're also and now since everyone is at home, it's very easy for us to get in touch with big industries and people, philanthropists, so that they can see our work and help us create a structure for these innovators and startups to fund them later on. So that has really helped us while we are staying at home. But then the lab access is completely restricted for now, and I'm hoping that will be starting soon in the month of January, because I don't see it coming in for the next 2 months.
Thank you, Bhavna. Thank you for that really tangible example of engaging the community by making hand sanitizer and then taking it out into community. That's just amazing. And then also seeing the opportunity when everyone's in lockdown, and yet you highlighted the fact that now you can actually you can access industry and philanthropists. And I love you surfaced this in the morning as well. The bravery of reaching out. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to move on now to our last speaker in this question. That's Ibarra. Thank you.
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, we are a pretty new organization, and 2020 was the year where we were going to hit the ground running, boots on the ground, in terms of fundraising and continue to expand our relationships that we had built and others that we wanted to build, which, you know, entailed us meeting in person. So I think that was the greatest challenge for us, not being able to carry out this plan that we had, which included like, you know, in the context of like in-person fundraising or really building those relationships with our community or other organizations in the community. Also in terms of like the type of workshops that we wanted to, educational workshops that we wanted to carry out. So that was the biggest challenge. We had to pivot into online learning. I think for us, the fact that we were starting small, you know, Thelma mentioned starting small, right? Was just absolutely important. If we had, you know, focused more on, you know, having a space and having all this equipment, it would have been a great challenge for us this year. So luckily, we focused on relationship building. We built relationships with other organizations, and that was really how we carried out some programming. And just some opportunities that I can speak of that were very, very impactful for us was the pandemic and how it affected our community, specifically like the farm worker community, which are, you know, these are essential workers that faced the greatest challenges during the pandemic because they had, you know, having to work and having really you know, just facing challenges in terms of transmission. So there was an opportunity for us to engage with this community and do something about it in a distributed model kind of sense, working with other organizations and creating PPE for these essential workers. And just leveraging our existing network, those connections that we made with other organizations and connecting with them to carry out some educational programs throughout the summer. Corinne was you know, leading a lot of this work. She led the PPE initiative wonderfully. So through that, we were able to make more connections with the community that I think are going to be important for us in the long run as we move into a space, you know, as we, once hopefully this is over, we will have enough connections there to move forward with our initial plan. Yeah, so starting out small was great opportunity. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you for sharing a bit of our story. The last question I'm going to pose one more question, and then we're going to open up to questions and sharing. I'm seeing a lot of great comments in the chat, great ideas. So the last question before we go to that is something that we should all reflect on. Like, how do you maintain your personal energy and strength in this time of COVID-19? I think it's very easy to just plow into things and like try to serve so many needs in our communities, but we need to do self-care. And so I would love to hear from all of you on the panel. What are some of your approaches to sustaining your personal, just your personal energy, and then sustaining your community as well, like self-care in the community. So self-care, and then care of community. So Harry, I'm actually going to start with you, if you don't mind sharing your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think this is a very great question, because in times like this, we need to really evaluate ourselves and find some source of motivation, because we are at the helm of communities. So if the leader or whoever is managing this community doesn't have any positive energies, obviously going to trickle down. So for me, one of the things that I have been doing during COVID, I always have been living by this one mantra, which says, this is the right time to do anything positive, and there's no better time than now to actually live your life to the fullest, right? So with that, waking up each day of my life thinking that one of the best opportunities I can have is now, and doing the best of things right now is what keeps me going. I spend most of the time just walking through the very beautiful scenes of Kumasi, the greens of Kumasi, just to rejuvenate my inner spirit and self, so that once I am that's positive, I'm able to trickle down that to the so many young people who we work with here in Kumasi, to also be that positive about themselves, because these are very trying times, having a lot of mental health related issues. People are battling with a lot of issues. So I try to stay that positive so that I have that energy translated or transferred to the people I work with. I would also say that keeping a very healthy body was one of the things that I really picked up during this period. And I think that there has not been any much time that I've seen a very huge transformation in myself, because I, during this period, have taken it upon myself to just frequent the gym as much as possible, to stay healthy, work out as much as possible, did lots of home workout. And that's one of the things that I try to inspire in my community, try to engage them. We go out as much as possible to work out, because we need to, first of all, have a very healthy community to do the kind of things we want to do. And also just generally trying to meditate as much as possible. And I'm also happy that the program included a yoga, just to help us reconnect ourselves together. And these are some of the little things that I personally have been doing that has kept me going, and the people that I work with and work for. So I think that's it for me.
Thank you, Harry. That's really wonderful, the ideas for self-care. Bhavna, would you like to share with us your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. So I try to keep myself very busy, so that the negative thoughts are away, since we are completely locked in. So yes, so I've enrolled myself for a few courses to again build and develop new skill sets. And also I keep meeting community members to keep them engaged as well. So we do several meetings per week to know what is happening with them, where are they stuck. So if someone has any funding requirement, so I try to connect them with industries who can fund them as a part of CSR. And also I work with startups to help them build, pivot their plans, since this pandemic is going to last a little more. So how are they going to sustain themselves? So we are always brainstorming and figuring things out, that what can be done now in this time, and then what is the way out. So we have developed a few more models for our startups and projects to pivot in this time, so that they can sustain. And I can proudly say that a few of our startups have already done that, and they're doing very well in this time, and they've found the opportunity in the pandemic. So they're earning well, they're generating revenues, they're reaching out to more and more countries. It's a good situation for us and the community for now, but then I'm hoping that we still we can continue to do it. And we're also we've also started this Darwin conference last year, so we are also busy in preparation, connecting more and more people here in India to make them aware about this DIY concept, the global community that we have here. So I think it's a great opportunity for us. Even if you're locked in, we have the world open for us. So it's a great opportunity for us right now.
You sound very busy. Thank you, Bhavna. Next, I'd like to hear from Thelma.
Yay. Yeah, exactly. What I started to do at the beginning of the pandemic was also like have a lot of activities going. But at some point, like 1 month after being at my home, I started like to burn out, because I was part of many things. So I said like, okay, calm down. And then I realized that I needed to have like a list of things to do in the day. And doing these things, I can get to a greater objective, And for example, I live in Mexico City, which is one of the biggest cities. and that means we have a lot of COVID cases. So just make sure that all the community around you is safe. And we all have like been in touch with people that sadly got the virus. So maybe calm down and say, okay, if this happened to your neighbor, well, be safe, wash your hands, tell us about it. So have these like sessions to be together, to sometimes talk just about COVID and how we are worried about that, but some other sessions to not to talk about that. And it's like, it's forbidden to talk about, and just to say jokes, to have a party, just to have different objectives more than professional, because it's really hard to manage this emotionally when you have so much COVID cases around you. So yeah, that's just that, like hug people from the distance, and not to worry too much about professional things. And another thing that happened is that most of the community around me are entrepreneurs, so they started new projects, even creating content, starting to sell, I don't know, um, to create desserts or little restaurants or something like that. So what we do was to share all these new projects and initiatives, and to say like, okay, that's cool, you live here, so I will share this in my Facebook so everyone can buy your paintings or your food or whatever. So just help people to get to other projects and to do what they really want to do. And for example, for the last part of it, is that in Mexico we have this crazy idea of instead of kids going to the school, we take classes by the TV. So you turn on the TV and it's always like classes for middle school, or all the young, like 6-year-old kids. So when you turn on the TV, you have like nothing to see. So you just really, if you're a young person or an adult, you are just watching classes, and it's like, okay, we have to find something else to put your head to. So create content and maybe recommend series or disconnect from professional purposes, because the TV is not an option now for Mexico. So just
Interesting.
find some ways to.
Thank you for sharing that, Thelma. That's such a different lens, because that's not the same way everywhere. So yeah, TV's off your palette of things to do. Really interesting. Rachel, could you share next? Self-care.
Sure. So during the pandemic, in terms of keeping busy, I think I definitely covered it through all these different Zoom meetings and Slack meetings and things like that. But in terms of the self-care thing, I guess I tried pretty hard to have a little bit extra for me. We actually, well, Switzerland didn't have such a strict lockdown. So I could even come into the lab if it was really necessary, and I knew there was hardly anyone else here. Then I would come, but I would be extra careful. And we did a bunch with big UV lights, because we have one room that has no windows, and I didn't want our older member that's retired to get sick. He wanted to do some experiments, so we did a bunch with UV disinfection of our inner lab space. And also making hand disinfectant stuff. We did a hand sanitizer 3 times during the first 6 months of the pandemic. And usually people would take it home, or it would go in the front entry hall here at the co-op where we are. And we didn't go out into the neighborhood and give it around, though. But the other thing I didn't really do hard sports, but I did Qigong, which I found to be very interesting in this, it's very slow, but you're focusing, and there's sort of this dynamic tension thing that it helped me. I liked it for a long time, but I think around June I stopped. In terms of, trying to keep sort of these virtual events going for the lab, and for the people to feel like they were doing things. it was a challenge, but we managed a few good things. The one thing we didn't do, which we meant to do, and I still wonder if I'll ever get to it, is there was that biohacker series, the Netflix one. I never watched it yet, and we had it on our schedule for the beginning of March, and we never did it. So
yes, I want to watch that too. Raise your hands.
and
Have
there's
you
a
seen that or
Telma.
in the chat? I've been hearing so much about it. Okay, cool. I got to see that too. Rachel, you and I, we got to get this on our calendar. Thank you for sharing. The last speaker
Yeah, we'll have to do it together.
yeah, the last person we're going to hear from on this topic, and then we're going to open it up for questions and discussion. And then after that, we'll have our mural board. But our last speaker right now, who's going to address the self-care and community care, is Ibarra. Thank you, Ana.
Yeah, so yeah, I think amidst the overwhelm of just information, I just recall, I don't know, I think all of you might have experienced the same, just bombardments, news changing, every second, every day it was a new thing. And I used to get very worried because I'm very interested in food systems, so like the supply chains and, you know, hunger and things of that nature. So I think it was important to create boundaries for yourself with Zoom or with work to avoid burnout. I think it's important. Sometimes it just seems like this continuum, like you're working and like you're in Zoom and then meeting after meeting, and then you're in. It's hard to set those boundaries. So on a personal level, I explored cooking and recipes, like traditional Mexican recipes that I had never gotten to. That was very gratifying, but also looking into helping out the community was very gratifying in terms of, you know, the mask PPE initiative was very gratifying, and doing things that were out of the ordinary, but we're still helping out someone that we knew was in need of more assistance, whether it was participating in a task force or you know, giving out ideas of how to care for farm workers in these times, or how to keep them safe. Just participating in those things that were typically you know, time intensive perhaps, and you know, out of the range of the typical like work that we did, but that we knew was helping our community, was to me gratifying during those times. So I also think like checking in with your colleagues, you know, specifically Rolando Perez, one of our co-founders, used to like call us or check in, and I really appreciated that. I think it's important to check in with those people that you either work with or care about, your community, if you know, if you have those kind of relationships. So that was helpful. Boundaries and especially boundaries with like social media and news, which was quite overwhelming. But, yeah.
Especially here in the U.S., Ana.
Mm-hmm. So many points of view. Yeah.
Thank you all so much. So now, thank you for all your reflections on those 3 questions. And I hope that those of you who are here also listening have been percolating your ideas, because we'd love for you to share your thoughts. I see a very active chat going here, and questions. So you can actually unmute yourself if you want to share a question or a comment around any one of these 3 topics that we had about biggest challenges in COVID, self-care, and themes around how you define community and getting started and sustaining. And don't be shy, you guys were active in the chat. So, and also any questions for the speakers? I don't believe it. Okay, I'm gonna look in the chat then and see if there are any questions. Oh, here's one.
I would have a question for Harry. We were talking about the disruption of the supply chains in Ghana. What specifically was not able to get, because I know that there have been problems worldwide with RNA extraction kits, but I think in your case it was more general. And yeah, the second question would be, for how long did this disruption last?
Yeah, so generally the consumables were not for COVID-related research, but for a project that was currently ongoing in our lab, just like I explained. So I would say it took quite about 2 to 3 to 4 months before finally getting hold of this reagent, finally to move our research forward. So it's general consumables and reagents from DNA polymerases to the other consumables that we usually need. The challenge here is that we in Ghana heavily rely on majority of these kits, reagents for research from abroad, and it becomes really expensive. Even if you're going to get them locally, the price margins are just too exorbitant for somebody like me to get hold of them. So these are some of the challenges that came with them. I don't know if that my response is a good feedback to your question.
Yeah, it is. With consumables, you say like EPIs, filter tips, pipette tips, and
Yes.
oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's also.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, and even currently, we have for some time now been looking for latex-free gloves, and we haven't gotten any because the feedback is that, I mean, it's all been taken for COVID research, and there are currently none that are stocked in Ghana. So it's very difficult to get a latex-free gloves to work with. And the ones we are getting are pretty bad and usually are introducing a lot of contaminants in the things that we do. So these are some very dark situations that the COVID has actually brought to researchers in our parts of the world. And it's just so sad to say.
True. Stick to it, Harry.
I would like to make a question. Sorry, can I? Yeah. Okay, I would like to ask you, all the panelists, for advices for starting a community lab in Venezuela, a country with so many economical, social, and political problems.
Okay, so I might want to go for this.
Oh, yes. Yeah. You, Harry, and then me.
Okay, so I think one of the things to get started is with yourself. So the idea is obviously the first point to get started. Secondly, I think you're building something for a community, and if you're building something for a community, you first, secondly, need to put that community together. So for me, these are the two most important things. First off, to get started with. The other stuffs are more technical stuffs, which I believe you already have. For which reason you don't need to struggle too much. So. Because the community would bring you a lot of resources which you cannot as an individual get. So building a community and first off starting all by yourself with the idea is important. And from the community you are going to build, you would get a lot of resources out from there, including the team that you are going to, the amazing team that would help you to actually set up these things would actually come from that community. So for me, these are the two most important things I think for now you need to focus on. And then secondly, your technical skills would also finally help to put everything into perspective.
Thank you.
Exactly. And another little thing about that is that you can build your community with people around you in the school, for example, not only your classmates, but also your teachers. So yeah, you can ask them. And then to know that it's not important not to have money, because sometimes at the university, they have new equipment, so they take the old one out. So you can say like, oh, I'm interested. If you're gonna take out something, please put me in the list, and be always behind that and behind that, and you will get to do things. And also you can 3D print micro pipettes, everything. So you can see in YouTube how to do that and learn. And yeah, you can build it as long as you have a good community.
Thank you.
I'd like to call out one. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the same. If you want to build out something strong with minimal resources, I think grassroots, a grassroots approach is very powerful. In like social capital theory, like we think of connections that might help us as those that are in a position of power or someone that has more resources than you. But in my situation, and how Xinampa got started was actually with social capital that I went to school with as a student. So those relationships that you have within your existing community are extremely valuable to start building out your network. And like Thelma said, reaching out to other organizations that are already established. Like we have sister labs like BioCurious and Counterculture Labs that we reached out to that were very helpful in terms of like either process, governance, or equipment advice. So there's no need to like reinvent wheels. Like reaching out to these communities is very, very important, I think, when you're starting out small.
Thanks.
I would like to elevate a question in the chat. If that's, oh, Rachel, did you want to share?
I was just going to say one more thing about when you do try to start something, it's not that you have to instantly have a fully equipped molecular biology lab. You really have to figure out what are your specific needs for what you want to find out. And then you can get other people interested and find a room somewhere, hopefully with some windows if possible, and ventilation in these days of Corona. But definitely you should start step by step. I really want to just be able to look in a microscope. You might try and find someone who's giving away an old microscope that their kid doesn't use anymore, things like that. You don't have to do the guys who started Hackuarium, some of them were really like schmoozing with the innovation team of also this industrial space we were in. So they really aimed high. But I think starting step by step is really the way to go, especially these days.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
I would like to elevate a question that I saw in the chat from Diana Molokana. Do you want to ask your question here out loud?
Hi everyone, hope you can hear me well. Sorry for delayed response because I'm having troubles with my internet, but it's really great to be here. My question was about the future of community labs after the pandemic. What do you think that things are going to change, or if there is going to be any particular change regarding work opportunities and so on? For every one of you, whoever wants to answer.
For me, I think maybe I'll go in for this. I think I have more experienced panelists on this particular topic, but what I want to say is that there is a huge future for and a role that community biotech labs or DIY labs can play, post-COVID-19, because clearly there are a number of visible initiatives that, the whole movement is leading currently, talk less of how the Just One Giant Lab project is trying to bring to bear how community labs are developing innovative solutions towards the COVID pandemic. And I think these are some of the things that are building trust in the public, who are who are like the major stakeholders in the kind of things that we are doing currently. So for me, I think that is where the bigger picture comes in, and how we, as a movement and as community biolabs, are going to continuously being engaged in the kind of things that we do. And we can all attest to the fact that there are a number of projects that are ongoing that are largely being facilitated by community biolabs. So for me, I think there is a huge potential for us now and post-COVID, which is very visible. And we just need to position ourselves to enjoy some of the benefits that come. I don't see it as a war in itself, but an opportunity to us in disguise to prove ourselves to the whole world and to our various communities. That's how I'm seeing it. And Africa, I see this in an African context, in that we were not having the capacity to do some of these things. And I would say some of the projects that are currently ongoing, our community biolabs are trying to champion some of these things, and people are beginning to realize that I mean, we can provide solutions to some of these things from a whole structural, different strategic point of view, and that is where our initiatives and communities really come in to play.
This is great to hear, Harry. I would love to also hear from some other speakers. So I love how you say this is an opportunity, Harry, and a time that labs can prove themselves. Any other speakers have thoughts on how will labs change after COVID? I thought this was a really great question from Diana. Yeah, Thelma.
Yeah, I think, for example, that science is way more important now for people in general. So maybe they are trying to connect to learn what is, for example, a virus, what is the difference with a bacteria, and they are starting to have this little amount of knowledge and getting interested in that. And I think the pandemic, what did is to create more community, because, for example, here in the same Bio Summit, we are much more people than we were like being present last year, because not everyone can travel. So now during all these months, we have connected one to each other. So I think community labs will come back stronger, and we're very well connected. So yeah, connections were awesome. And I think once we can visit each other, everyone will be like much more excited to go to a community lab to actually see and touch and make and do some kind of experiments. So I think this will be helpful. And definitely community was super enhanced during this pandemic.
I just want to say something. I think the pandemic, if anything, exposed a lot of the issues that we have in terms of capacity, right? To manufacture our food supply chain, supply chains in general. And I think in order for us to be more resilient and sustainable in the future, because I don't think this is the last pandemic, we have so many challenges upcoming with global warming, that we need to think in a more like distributed sense, distributed manufacturing, but also distributed biomanufacturing. And I think for that to happen and for us to have capacity to even do that, we need to think in informal educational spaces and think more creatively in terms of how everyone is going to get involved in this. Because I think the current models, they're just not going to be enough for us to meet those challenges fast enough. So I think they're going to be huge. Yeah, hugely important.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. It's a really important point. All right, so we're going to actually shift gears here. We're going to go into a mural board. And before we do, I'm going to go ahead and throw it into the chat. And for those of you familiar with it, you can go there. I'd recommend you open up a second tab, but I'm going to share my screen and just kind of walk you through how to do this. So this is like an online dry erase board. So I'm hoping you all can see this. If I can see some thumbs up to know that you're seeing my screen. Thelma? Yeah, okay, cool. All right, so this is a place where we can write thoughts and come back to it later as well. So I'm gonna show you how to navigate this. So you see this board, it's kind of far away right now. People get kind of lost in this when they don't know how to navigate. So in your bottom right corner is a navigation tool, and you can click on the little plus symbol and zoom in closer. and then you can pan. And so it would be great if we spent the next 10 minutes, everyone getting into this, and I've written a chat, and exploring. And let me show you how you add a comment. So I'm going to zoom in a little closer. So again, I'm going to the bottom right corner, and I'm going to just click on an existing sticky note. And if you double click on it, I'm going to get a little closer. If you double click on a sticky note, there's already a text cursor there. So I'm under like, what is the challenges in the time of COVID? I might say the challenges, just stress, and make the type a little bit bigger. If you go up here, you can see how I can expand the size of the type. Stress, individually, and in community. Okay, and then we'll just kind of fill that post notes for you. You can grab an existing post note and drag it over and add a thought. If there is not enough post-it notes, you can go in this left panel here. So I can grab a sticky note, this little piece with a turned up corner, that's the sticky note icon, and I can just grab another sticky note, double click, or in this case, it's already has a text cursor, and you can type. So funding, I'm gonna put funding as a challenge, okay? So you can grab sticky notes from the left. You can also take arrows and connect thoughts. So I could click here and then connect there. And when I do that, that means if I move the sticky note, it's still connected. This thought is still in response to something else that's already written. If you want to delete something, all you need to do is click on it. So I'm going to click on this arrow. And down here, you see a little trash can. I can just delete it. So all we're doing is going to the sticky notes. And again, you just hold down your key. I have a roller track. So I can hold this down and pan sideways, and really use this navigation tool in the bottom right. This will really help you out, figure out how to navigate. There's also a little rectangle that you can move in that map to navigate across the board. And if it just gets a little too much, and you can zoom back out and see, okay, where do I want to go? Do I want to start, and how do I get started? And put some comments there. Also hoping you can share some thoughts on the resources to share at the bottom, because I know we have so many interesting people in the chat. I wish we could have everyone as a speaker on this panel, because I was looking at some really interesting things. So if you could share this, if you could share your thoughts here, I then will share it in the Slack, and so hopefully more people who weren't able to join with us can gain some insight. All right, so I'm going to actually keep sharing screen just because it's interactive for people who have not logged into the Miro, but I'm hoping a bunch of you will go into the Miro link. Let me know if it works. Oh, and just so you know, there's a password. It's microbes rule. It's the same for the website. Sorry, I'm not seeing a chat. I'm sure that was thrown in the chat as a question, but it's microbes rule. Actually, I'll exit share screen sharing to put that in. Sorry, I was just watching, like, how do I get there? There you go. So across this conference, we're pretty much using the same password. And so hopefully you can get into this and start collaborating. In terms of speaking with what Anna was saying earlier about us engaging with our community in Xinampa and Xinampa sponsored projects, we use this board a lot with teams. So this is a tool that's been very, very helpful in this distance learning. Okay. So I'm going to share a screen again, just hopefully you guys can get in and add your thoughts, see if you can navigate this tool. I'm curious to hear if you think it's useful. And go ahead and unmute yourself if you have any questions as well. I mean, at the very least, you can go into what you do for sustaining personal energy and strength. Okay, I've seen someone's written going for hikes, setting aside time to be completely offline, keeping up with the Kardashians viewing party. Yeah, there's some interesting things in here. So please add your thoughts. And again, especially at the bottom, resources, I think is a really important thing to share. This is a good point. Someone said more people are interested in biology with the pandemic. I think that is very true. More people than ever want to do stuff that matters. Yes.
Yeah, that was what I wrote. More people are into biology, but what's our overriding aim now? Just putting some things in?
Yeah, so this is a collaborative board for us to put thoughts, especially people who didn't get a chance to speak, to share their thoughts and their ideas, and then and resources as well. So the very bottom of this is a resource section. And this is an asynchronous tool. So this is very useful, we found in Xinampa, for teens who don't have consistent internet access, or they live in households with many families. That it's much better to have something that you can log in at different times. That's already designed to be either synchronous or asynchronous, so that they don't feel bad they can't log on at an exact time to an exact discussion. It's a very nice way to engage with others. So we just wanted to highlight this because, at least in the United States, there are communities, especially in ag worker communities, where the internet is so bad. For one, we've had kids sitting outside fast food restaurants with their computers trying to log into school because they don't have Wi-Fi at home. And then when they do even have access to Wi-Fi, it's too noisy, or they're expected to be babysitting during that synchronous moment. So this is the invitation to think about what are the asynchronous tools that we can use to engage with community who maybe can't get on at exact same time, or in this case, we're in a global context where we have many different time zones. So this will be accessible within the Slack for the Power of Community track, so people can add additional ones in the future. And we are at time, so I'm going to zoom out and stop sharing screen. I hope you will continue to use this tool and explore it. It can be very powerful. So I hope you'll stay in there. Everyone was able, I saw some people in there. I hope it's, I'm just reading a chat real quickly. Okay, great. Okay. Yes, this is the last part of the session. And so Bhavna, thank you so much. If I can't see if you're still here, thank you so much for joining us. I know it's super late. What time is it, Bhavna?
It's almost 1 a.m. in the night.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, so this ends.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you so much for coming. And so at this end, I would just like, yes, all the clap hands, thank you so much. If anyone who was not part of the panel to share a few thoughts on what you feel like you've learned or what you saw as a common thread, I'd rather not summarize it. I'd rather have someone else share their thoughts. Maybe we can get a few people to share their thoughts here.
I guess I see a common kind of thread amongst a lot of people that are trying to start up and kind of reflect on how my community lab started. We had a meetup group that was the DIY Bio Vancouver meetup group, and that was started by a fellow who he's on our board, but he's not very active, but it wasn't particularly active. And then when we formed the nonprofit Open Science Network Society, we could see from Meetup a parable of growth and activity. So I think an important thing is really just to start going and start pushing things out there and engaging people, and use online tools like Meetup to be able to get more people signing up. But it's a lot of work, so really pace yourself. Yeah.
Thank you, Scott. Would anybody else like to share their closing thoughts and what you've seen as a common thread here?
I would like to say thank you to all of the panelists and also to you, Mrs. Corinne, for this session. It was incredible and so much inspiration to do better things for the world. So thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you, Samantha, so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I would just like to share, unless, wait, I'm going to ask one more person and then I can do a little summary, but I would love to hear more because there's so many interesting thoughts here, so many interesting people. I see a very active chat. So any other thoughts? Don't be shy. As David Kong says, be brave. Okay, I might call on people. No, no one has anything they want to say? Okay, then I'm going to leave it to panelists. Okay, wait, I heard someone. Go ahead, Rachel.
It was just me. I just realized I didn't sign the Google Doc. Is that okay? Can someone put me in the Google Doc?
Yeah, can we throw up the sign-in sheet again? I would just like to
No, but
say
this was really great. Thank you, Corinne.
yeah, it's been a real pleasure to be here and to listen to so many different contexts. So going into this, I didn't know if there would be common threads or what they would be. And it's been really, really a joy to hear how you all have engaged with the immediate needs of the community, whether it's developing PPE or developing hand sanitizers, being very nimble and creative about creating distributed labs. Just hearing Thelma talk about people taking equipment home and taking it to their homes. Xinampa has done the same thing. We have parts, different equipments in different garages. So how do we reimagine what is a lab? And I really value also, I think it was Diana's question about how do we imagine the future of labs? So what are they going to be, and are they going to change after COVID? So some things won't, but I think I would like to also go back to what Anna said, is this highlighted some really big challenges and some issues that have always been there, but COVID has elevated to the surface, and how we can work more broadly across different groups that maybe hadn't talked before as much. So as Rachel highlighted, you mentioned that, you know, it's really important to talk with different organizations, possible funders, and Harry, I love how you were still able to pivot your programming with women in schools and doing a hybrid program that was online and did social distancing in your lab. And Bhavna, you sharing how you you're getting successful startups coming out of your labs. This is very optimistic to hear what you all are able to do and working really, really hard, and hopefully also doing self-care, because our communities need you. And we all are a network here, and we need to self-care as well as care for our communities. This is going to be a long haul in terms of what we're going with COVID, and it will be a longer haul in some countries than others. I say as I sit here in the United States. And I think it's really important that we play our roles, new roles, as was highlighted by Thelma, talking about science communication and doing infographics. I just love it that you elevated that, because as I saw in the mural board, and I think it was you, Rachel, who said this, more people are interested in science, more people are wanting to understand science, and there's an opportunity to build trust in our communities and broaden our communities to people who are not currently engaged in our community biolabs. So I'm going to end my comments there, but is there any last closing comments that we have from any of the speakers? I just want to give you, we've got just a few moments if the speaker has something that they would like to share.
I'd like to suggest or pass on one advice that I received from Tito, that before when you want to start a lab, just develop a model, a sustainability model for your lab, so that you know that where are you going. And it's going to be a really big challenge when you start the lab, so that you have to sustain yourself. So build a sustainable model so that you don't have to be very weak at the financial side. So that's the only advice that I like to give to everyone. And thank you so much for having me here, and I'm going to be a part of this entire conference, so looking forward to connecting with you, all of you.
Thank you so much, Bhavna. And just on that note of sustainability model, if any of you all have templates or anything that you use for sustainability, it'd be great to put that into the Slack conversation or on the mural board. I know that as a bio fellow, we've had some tools shared with us in terms of how you develop sustainability models. But if anyone has one that they would be willing to share, I think that would be really a great value to all of us. Yes. And so I'm just so grateful for this time, and I hope you all will continue. I'm gonna actually be moving to another track in a moment, to the diversity and inclusion. But this is an amazing track, and there's such a great lineup coming up. This is all about community for us to move forward in what we're doing in our spaces all around the world. We have to build our hyper-local communities, so address very, very local needs, very specific hyper-local needs, but at the same time, develop these more global networks and support. So the thought here that I'd like to leave you with is, how do we do that? How do we leave this conference in a few days growing robust connections to each other, and ideas for really anchoring and supporting and drawing in our very hyper-local communities into the conversations. And it's going to be a different solution in that realm for each community. And so I invite you all to think about that today when you're here in this Power Community track, as well as throughout the rest of this conference. Make those connections, be active in the Slack, be active on all the platforms that we have here, Twitter, Instagram, and thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Corinne,
Thank
for
you,
organizing
speakers.
everything. It was awesome.
Thank you, amazing speakers.
Great, thank you all. So I think we are on our break now, and we will return for the next sessions pretty shortly in about 15 minutes time. And I hope to see you all soon. Grab some coffee, rehydrate, and let's get back.